So welcome to session 3 of the UK Lambing School. So tonight we're going to talk about birthing, which I know several of you are in the midst of. I'm getting lots of emails about it. If you're not familiar, this is your first night. The Kentucky Sheep and Goat Development Office and the Kentucky Sheep and Wool Producers is helping Dr. Ely get this lambing school online. So we're glad that we are able to help him do that. And if you're not familiar with us, here's our email address, kysheepandgoat.org. Go check that out. Lots of good stuff. All of these videos will be on that website after the 5 sessions are over.
What I plan to do here is discuss the lambing time in preparation for it. Basically, maybe from the time the ewe starts to have labor pains and go all the way through it. After that, I have a short video of ewe lambing and assistance we gave. I have a set of slides of mal presentations, unfortunately, but I thought I need to discuss a few of those. Then the last thing is I want to discuss a little bit on some of the baby lamb diseases, the young lamb diseases. So if we'll get started on this first slide. So we all know this, I assume. Signs of parturition. The old ewe that's going to lamb is going to be, she's going to isolate herself from the other ewes. And especially, you know, if you watch these in the barn, you'll see this ewe isolate herself, and the other ewes will go to the other end of the pen or the area to leave her alone, and so she can have her privacy and having these lambs. But she'll sag in front of the hips and the relaxed vulva. Her udder will be really, really full. I think we get confused or fooled sometimes when we're looking at the udder, and we keep looking at it day after day, and we say, well, it's not getting any bigger than yeah, it is becoming full. Yeah, she's due anytime. Whoa, it's probably not quite as full as we think it is a lot of times. So that means that we probably ought to have some records, if we can, of when the ewe was bred, so we'll know whether the udder is full, if it's going to be a sign of parturition. Also, that udder may leak some colostrum immediately prior to her lambing. She'll look behind her towards her back end and may even call for the lamb. That lamb is born. It's going to be wet. Born last week when it was a hair bit chilly. It's wet. It went from 102 to 103 degrees inside the ewe to 0. That's a pretty rough landing, wouldn't you say? So something better give pretty quick. That ewe better be on the ball to take care of that lamb, because it cannot control its body temperature. It'll freeze to death, as we know, because there's no nutrient stores in its body at that time. Therefore, it's got to get some nutrition from somewhere, and that comes from the ewe. She's got to get the lamb up and nursing. She needs to get that lamb up in five minutes or so, or pretty quick. Okay, 5 minutes is pretty quick for some lambs. It may be about the right amount of time for others. Usually, the bigger the lamb, maybe the slower they're going to get up, assuming they're healthy. So she needs to work really hard to get the lamb on its feet and get it towards its heat. So for nutrition, so that it can control its body temperature and keep from freezing. If she can't do it, then it behooves us, I think, to be out there at that time to help her. But we would like for her to do it herself rather than depend on us to do it. So you have to make that judgment. It's when you're going to give her some assistance here to get the lamb out of the pen into a jug and get it on the teat. I think on that we should also remember that the GI tract, gastrointestinal tract of the baby lamb is wide open. It is open to infection. The pens need to be relatively clean to try and cut down on any infection that might occur. But part of what we are going to do is we're going to counteract some of that infection potential with the colostrum that they're going to get that ties in with the nutrition that's right above it. So then the lamb is born, and we must have imprinting or bonding. Typically, we would like for the ewe to stay, if everything's good, it's got the lamb up, it starts to nurse on its own, then we would like to leave them in the same area for a couple of hours or so. And if she's got twins, then even more so that they can bond. The lambs know who their mother is, and the mother knows who her lambs are. Then if they've nursed, then we can take them to the lambing pen. If they have not, and it's too bad, too cold, then you better get them out of there, get them to the lambing pen, and help the lambs to nurse in the lambing pen. The first 24 hours is the most important. It's when you shepherds need to use all your expertise. I've stated this many times, and I learned this from Andre Fink, who managed a sheep unit at UK. We've been together for many years. He says, this is the most important time. The ewe can become pregnant. She can raise the lamb inside her until she lambs. She can do all that fine based on the rations that we talked about last week in late gestation and so forth. Now, then she has that lamb. That's when she needs the help. She's got 2 lambs she's got to take care of, or 3. So we allow that ewe to lamb in that close-up pen. It's nice if we're there. We can't always be there, obviously. So she does the best she can until we show up. And we get those lambs out of there if they've nursed, or whenever it's time to move them out of the close-up pen to the lambing pens or jugs. When we come to the lambing pen or the jug, one of the first things you do is check the lamb's mouth and its eyes. And you got to stay on, I think you should stay on the eyes. The mouth, what I'm talking about here is probably parrot mouth or monkey mouth, overshot or undershot. If there's a malformation of the mouth. But the eyes is important here because we can't let the lower eyelid of the lamb roll into the eyeball of that lamb. If it does, then those eyes are going to start to water. It's going to scratch that eyeball and then lose that eye. That's called inverted eyelid or entropion. I don't know, I hope nobody has those problems, but we have them some. So we stay on top of it in the first 24 hours of looking at those eyes, and anything that'll water, it'll go down below the eye and you can see it. If you look at each one of those lambs closely, if it's watering, you'll be able to see it. Then you have to take care of it, roll it out, try to roll it out, and if you can't, then you may have to snip a little piece right underneath there to cause a sore and a scab so that the eyelid will grow out away from the eyeball. But anyway, we check those eyes and mouth. At the same time, we dip the navel in iodine, then put them in the lambing pen and check the udder. Check the udder. The teat has a mucal plug in the end of it. So you must be able to pull that out by stripping the teat if the lambs haven't already done so. That lambs might be a little bit weak and can't get it done, or we may have to move them out of the close-up pen to the lambing jug too quick. They didn't have a chance to get up to nurse, so then we would help them out by stripping that teeth out. I don't know, and I wonder sometimes, where do we strip that teeth? Let's say we're in the lambing jug. Okay, do we just strip it out on any bedding that we might have there or whatever there? Or do we put it in a container, strip it into a container? I'm about to think that maybe we should take something to strip to catch the colostrum that we strip out, because somewhere or another we might be spreading mastitis from one ewe to another because we put other ewes in the same lambing jugs. So you might consider that, is if you have to strip it out, instead of just stripping it out on some straw or bedding or whatever's in the pen, you might catch that and then discard it. Make sure that the lamb nurses. And again, I refer to Andre Fink. He says, and he told you that in the first session that we had when he talked about sheep equipment, that the stomach tube was the most important piece of equipment to have on hand when at lambing time. It'll save more lambs than you can count by giving, instead of waiting on the lamb to nurse and get really cold, and if it doesn't die, then it's slow. It's going to slow its growth down because it got severely cold. Maybe might need to go ahead and milk some of the milk out, or get some colostrum out of the freezer and stomach tube that lamb directly. I've seen lambs that can hardly move, laying on their side, really, really cold. Stomach tube them with some colostrum. Within an hour or 2 hours, they're up bawling and ready to go. So that's a pretty important piece of equipment. The ewe's going to want water first. She'll go straight to the water source. If you don't have a bucket or something in the pen for her to drink out of, make sure you go get one, because she'll need that because she's worked on that lamb so much. Then later on, 12 hours or 6 hours or whatever, sometime later, you can provide her some hay. Then we need to look at those lambs often. During the daylight hours, when we're working in the barn or wherever else, we need, every chance we get, we need to look at these lambs, get them up, and ideally be every 2 hours. But I understand that we can't always do that, but that's theoretical. So as often as you can. Talked about colostrum. This is important. It's a source of antibodies to counteract those disease organisms that might go in that GI tract. It is a source of nutrients for that lamb, and the nutrient that it provides that keeps that lamb warm is fat. Colostrum is loaded with fat. That's what the lamb needs. Plus, that lamb eventually is going to, if he's going to consume any colostrum, he's going to have to defecate. So we have to prime the digestive tract, so to speak, and we prime that with colostrum as it's a laxative. It starts the digestive tract to work so that then it can absorb, the lamb can absorb nutrients from the digestive tract, and then that part, those parts that are not absorbed into the bloodstream, then they can defecate there. So it provides three main functions. We normally think antibodies is the main one, and I guess it is, but those other two are critically important as well. So timing is critical to putting the colostrum into the lamb. As I said, you may need to stomach tube that lamb early if it's really cold and he hasn't nursed yet. You can do that. Then make sure that he's consumed some by 4 hours. If he hasn't done that, then you may need to give him another stomach tube load, 8 hours. And this, in this case, if the lamb is not getting any colostrum, you've lost a ewe or something like this, then you're going to have to feed, I think, the colostrum like I've got here, up to 24 hours. If they're nursing the mother, they're going to receive colostrum for about 24 hours from her. And that's the reason I've got 24 hours here if you have the stomach tube. So she shuts down on her colostrum synthesis, and the lamb doesn't get any more, and she reverts to regular milk synthesis after about 24 hours. And that's what happens. All that GI tract is wide open in the first 24 hours to infection, but then that closes up. After that to very small. And so the lamb doesn't have to have the colostrum to counteract the interactions or the infections. Stomach tube, as I've talked about, be careful, please. Set the lamb between your legs, set his rear end on your ankles, and hold him with your legs, and then carefully thread the stomach tube down his throat. If you get in the wrong place, it'll tell you. He'll start having a fit, whether he's weak or not. If you're in the lungs, he will tell you. Okay, so, but be careful when you're going. I've been in those lungs before, and I know how they react. So the colostrum, you're going to get it from the ewe, from that lamb's mother. You're going to milk it into a syringe or a cup or something, and then put it in a syringe. Or you're going to get it out of the freezer and you have had a supply of this. And Andre mentioned this in the beginning on when we're talking about equipment, that you ought to have colostrum frozen in Ziploc bags so that you can thaw it out. Don't use a microwave. The 60 to 120 cc's, 2 to 4 ounces per dose. We talked about how often to do it, and this basically says the same thing. Repeat 4 to 6 hours up to 24 hours after birth. So you got to get them going with the colostrum. Then, if you got a situation like this where you got a lamb or triplets, and the ewe can't provide enough colostrum and milk for 3 lambs, what are you going to do? Do you have another ewe that has lambed? It's just got a single. And can you graft that lamb onto that other ewe? You can do it. I'd say that they got to be born pretty close together. The further they are from birth of one lamb to another, the harder it is to get that ewe to accept an orphan lamb or a triplet to her. That's not her own. So what we can use, you can use a stanchion, you can use a slime procedure, or you can, in this situation, if a ewe has a dead lamb and you want to graft another ewe's lamb onto her, you could skin the dead lamb and tie it on to the one you're going to graft onto the ewe, and she might take it that way. However, that's a little bit of a problem because if you leave it on there very long, it's stinking. But so the stanchion is the best way, and you can make a stanchion, make it out of wood. It's no problem. It's just like cow stanchions or any other stanchions where you close her head off from the rest of her body, not tight, but just so she can't get away from that area. Put feed and water in front of her and put the lamb in. Teach the lamb to nurse that ewe. Make that lamb think it's his mother. She might kick around and stomp and take on a little bit, but you got to show her who the stronger individual is in this case. Classic example of that was the previous manager of the sheep unit before Andre Fink. We tried to put a lamb onto a ewe, and that ewe would not take that lamb. But this manager had a little bit of a stubborn streak in him, and he says, I'm going to win this battle. He worked with that ewe. The lamb grew really well. He turned the ewe out once in a while when the lamb got a little bigger. Lamb learned to not mess with her when they were out in the middle of the pen. And then that lamb knew that lamb knew that we're going to put that ewe back in the stanchion, and then that lamb could nurse her. The manager of the sheep unit kept that lamb on that ewe for 60 days. She stayed in the stanchion basically for 60 days. Obviously, we let her out and so forth, but she never did take the lamb because we turn her out and she'd try to run it down, run over it, whatever. The other system is the slime system, where if you loses a lamb, then you can take the fluid from that lamb as it's born. If it's dead, then you could rub it on another lamb and put it in front of her, and maybe she will take it. But that's okay to do that. But I still think that you could use a stanchion system, build one, buy one. You could even use halters to tie them up to get them to work. You could put some walls on the side so that she can't go all the way around to one side or the other when the lamb's trying to nurse. And I would say you might have to hold that ewe some to get that lamb started. Grafting techniques, rather than trying to raise these lambs on a bottle or on milk replacer, we like to try to graft onto other ewes if we possibly can. The little newborn lamb, they vocalize very little. They'll eat, sleep, and play. About 24 hours, they'll be playing around in the jug a little bit. Okay, they remember they sleep in the curl position. When you go by every 2 hours to look at them, you can make a little noise, get them up, or you can use a shepherd's crook or so to get them up. And if they'll get up and stretch, that means they're in good shape, usually. And if they walk around, they'll walk with straight back. If a lamb is cold, what's it going to look like? It's going to be all humped up, isn't it? And it may be vocalizing as well. But so the normal lamb will vocalize very little and sleep in the curl position, get up and straight back. It'll have a warm mouth. You can put your finger in there and a full belly when you look at that. It'll have, if you check the temperature, it'll be 102 to 103 degrees. That lamb gets a cold mouth. Stick your finger in there and that mouth is cold. Get it someplace warm. Get it some colostrum or get it milk, depending on how old it is. If in the first 24 hours, make sure it gets some colostrum and get it in a warm area. Take it into the kitchen or someplace to warm it up. We think that you can move ewes and lambs out of the lambing pen after 24 hours, depending on how many jugs you've got and how many ewes are lambing. You may be forced to move them earlier than 2 to 5 days. I prefer that they keep them in there 2 to 5 days. For one thing, it's making sure that they're bonded, that the ewes milking and the lambs and the ewe are healthy. When you come out of there, you can trim the feet if you so desire. Lay the ewe down and trim her feet. You can deworm them and make sure you check the udder before you put them in the mixing pen. Make sure you check the udder before you put them in the mixing pen, please, because you get in there and she's got a little touch of mastitis or something, her milk production goes down. You're wondering why in the world is that lamb not doing any good, or it's cold. Then you get in there to try to catch her. Then you run over lambs, get stepped on. Okay, so make sure that udder is functioning before you ever turn her out in a bigger pen or a bigger area. Deworming, again, especially by 10 to 14 days after she's had a lamb, or you could do it as you move out of the jug. Dock, castrate the lamb. If dock the lambs, depending on the breed that you've got, certainly all the wool breeds and a lot of the hair breeds will have to be docked, depending on your situation, whether to castrate or not. If you're going to castrate, if you're a commercial producer and you're just going to take these lambs to market and you can castrate as they come out of the jug, probably that is the best time, the safest time to do it. Granted, if you keep them as ram lambs, they might grow a little bit faster. But if you keep them as ram lambs and then suddenly you decide after 30 days that you want to castrate, that's a little bit more serious than castrating a 2-day-old lamb. Sore mouth vaccine. I'm going to talk a little bit about sore mouth here this evening in another set of slides. And if you haven't had sore mouth, don't do anything. If you have sore mouth on your sheep, you need to vaccinate the baby lambs as they're born. And you would also need to vaccinate the ewes, the whole flock of sheep, if you've had sore mouth before, because the lambs can get it, they can spread it to the ewe, it can go from ewes to rams and so forth. Identification, and then with the ear tags, and then antitoxin CD&T. If you have not given the CDT vaccine as a toxoid to the ewe 6 weeks or 2 weeks before lambing, you may want to vaccinate for overeating. That's hemorrhagic septicemia or hemorrhagic enterotoxemia, which is overeating type C. In this case, you need to give it as an antitoxin, which is a fast-acting vaccine, versus the toxoid. They build up an immunity over a period of time with that. Then these are the major young lamb diseases or disorders, as I call them: sore mouth, tetanus, hemorrhagic enterotoxemia, scours, pneumonia, and white muscle or stiff lamb disease. That would be the disorder. The others would be diseases. I'm going to talk about these in another set of slides. So, they're summarizing this little part. Know when the ewe is going to lamb. Let her lamb unassisted if possible. Ewe and lamb management is critical in the first 24 hours because of colostrum intake. You may have to graft on another ewe. We talked about that for a second. Troubleshoot what we look for. And we're going out of the lambing jug into the mixing pen. Be concerned about lamb diseases or disorders. Be positive. Expect some problems. Be ready to handle. You experts out there, would you agree that this is the way we should do it? Go into this thing positive and stay positive, but in any kind of business, you're working with a live animal like these things are, they're not all going to be normal. So we have to react as best we can. I have a video that a short video I'm going to show as far as lambing, a ewe that was having a lamb at the UK sheep unit, and we tracked this ewe down and just trying to describe what we did as she was having those lambs.
So as we were coming down the barn to start feeding, we noticed in one of the first pens we've got a ewe that has already pushed out one lamb. We didn't have to assist in that birth, obviously, but she will have another one. You can see how the lamb is still covered in all the mucus, and she's cleaning it. Like I said, we didn't have to assist at all. She had that lamb on her own, no problem. It looks good the way its head's up. You see it's already attempting to stand up, and it's only a few minutes old at this point. The instinct to stand up and nurse is pretty strong. So we like to see that lamb looks perfectly healthy. And she will continue to lick that lamb off. And she will lay down, and she'll have another lamb here shortly. At least one more. So on this ewe that we filmed earlier, she's had her second lamb. As you can see, a lot of times they're born with their head down like that, and it can suffocate them. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna swing him, try and get all the fluid down, and we will clean off his nose. You want to open up that nose so he can breathe. So we'll squeeze all the fluid off of his nose. A lot of times, you can really, if you smack on his side on his lungs and get him going, and see how he's up and he's alert. He's got his head up now. He ought to be good to go. We got all the fluid out of him. We got his nose cleaned off, so we know his airway's clear. A lot of times you can go in their mouth, make sure that's clear as well. We can get all that gunk out of there, especially the way he was laying. Now we've got him sitting up. He's alert. We know his airways are clear, so we'll let the mama do her thing and continue to clean him off. So now we're going to show you the process of taking the ewe and her lambs out of the mixed pen. We're going to take her and we'll put her in the lamb pen we showed you earlier. You see how Andre, he's thumping her at this point. So that's a good way for us to see if there's another lamb. Sometimes just by looking at the ewe, it's hard to tell, especially with these bigger polypays. So you saw he just took his hand and made a fist right in front of her udder, and he'll push up and down real quick. And what that does is if there's another lamb in there, it's pretty obvious because you're going to feel that lamb come back down and hit the top of your hand. So that's just an easy way for us to tell if there's another lamb without actually having to sleeve up and go into you. So you can see he's picking lambs up by their front legs. That's a pretty normal way to handle these baby lambs. It allows us to carry multiple lambs. See how he's dragging them, making sure that she's able to smell them, and she's going to follow those lambs right up here. do this slow and easy, you want to make sure the ewes with you the whole time, and that scent is a real big part of it. So now we're up here at our scales. So we just have a simple hanging scale with a bucket. That bucket has seen many lambs. So what we do, we just take a lamb, we'll place it in the bucket in a way that it's not going to fight us too much, so we can get an accurate weight on the lamb. And just hang that bucket up. Once the weight is steady, we can then record on our sheet. This sheet just allows us an easy, quick reference. We'll write the ewe down, her number, her breed, the date of the birth, and then we'll obviously write down the weight of each lamb and the sex. And we can, this one is a ram, so we can then use this sheet as a reference to write down on our in order to make the tags for the lambs and put in our records. This lamb is a ewe lamb. See, she weighs 9 pounds and 1 ounce. And so now he's going to take these lambs and we will then move them to the lambing pen. He's got the iodine in that container. You see how the ewes should real nice and easy. Follow him right into the pen. And it's real important. We're going to dip each navel in that iodine. That just helps to prevent any kind of infection and helps to dry those navels up. Now he's going to what we would call strip the ewe. So a lot of times the teats are going to have just a little plug in them. And when you first put the ewe in the lambing pen, you want to strip that out of the teat and make sure that the colostrum's flowing. Now that we've done that, we're going to leave them alone, let her continue cleaning them off, and we'll come back and check on them later to make sure that they've nursed. Other than that, they should be good to go.
In that video, the reason those ewes were crowded around that one ewe that was having a lamb, that's because Matt and Leanne were in the pen trying to video this thing. So they chased those ewes over towards that ewe and that one lamb as she was trying to have the other one. So that is an abnormal type of a situation. So did you hear that the ewe was making a noise? Did you hear her talking to the lamb? Yes, you got to look for that. And what Andre did on that ewe to see if she's going to have a third lamb was bumped her. That's B-U-M-P. Bump her. Bump the ewe so that you see if you can feel another fetus in the ewe's uterus. And he did not, so then we pulled him out. This is a normal position. Those two lambs were in good shape. Everything worked out good. That's the way we'd like it every time. Don't you agree? Yeah. And if they're born like this, that lamb that you saw born was coming out just like this. Okay? Head first. Like he's diving. So possible signs of dystocia. That dystocia is difficult birth in any mammal. If we see the ewe straining without making any progress, okay, that's a sign we may be in for a little bit of a job for a long period of time. And she ought to work for 30 minutes or an hour, and sometimes even longer than that. But at the same time, you got to make sure that that what you're seeing is normal. So you may watch your strain and discover some of the things that are not quite right. Prior to that, we may be feeding time and she's out here straining. Does she go up to try to eat or not? No. Even if it's earlier than that, she may not have any appetite if there's something wrong inside her or with the lamb position. The water bag might be dark red or brown in color. Okay. Too dark, too brown, too dark red. Yeah. Something is up here. And once she has that water bag out, then there's excess time there. The straining without progress the water bag may not be out, but then eventually if the water bag comes out, then she still may be straining and not making any progress. But eventually you might see some hooves. Hopefully you'll see some of these come out eventually. If you don't, then we're gonna have to go in. If the hooves are seen, but they may be upside down, what does that mean? Yeah, the lamb's upside down, okay? Or it might mean that the lamb's coming backwards, okay? And it's going backwards. And if you don't see any feet, but just a tail, we're in for a little bit of work at that stage, I think. Possible dystocia problems. As I said, I had 12 of them on one sheet of paper right here beside me, okay? This is a single lamb, okay? No legs or head is presented. Nothing showing. What are you going to do? I'm not sure anybody can tell us what we're going to do. We just have to live it, okay? But we've got to turn the lamb to try to make it come out backwards or forward, like the first slide that I showed you, okay? With the head and the nose laying on the front legs in the front. That tail might be showing. It might be showing or it may not. But then you go in there and the first thing you feel is a tail. You should feel first thing when you go inside the ewe is what? Those front feet and the head. So can we pull this lamb backwards? If we do, then we're going to have to cup each one of the hind legs in our hand and try to stretch it out so that you can pull those two back legs all the way out of the ewe. This is breech. As a rookie, I lost a lamb, lost a ewe too. She was a ewe lamb, okay? Lost them both because I didn't recognize what I had, okay? Did not recognize, broke the lamb's neck, obviously, and then worked so much trying to still get it out. I couldn't do it, and the ewe died in my hands. So that was stupid on my part. But the thing about it is, this is a situation that can be encountered more than one time. So you have to push the lamb back, place that head on the legs, and then try to pull it through with the head laying on the front legs. That's okay. You might be able to do that if it's single, okay? But you may have another lamb in there. That's even worse. Make sure you got the right leg with the right lamb, okay? All right. And at the same time, you got your arm in there and it's tight. And you're trying to push the lamb back. And what's the ewe trying to do? Push the lamb out. So it's a tug of war. Okay? It's tough going. It's tough going. This is I think fairly common. I think the previous one was kind of common also, and this one probably a little bit more so with the elbows are locked. So you have to pull one leg out at a time and get those legs straightened out, because there's not enough room the way the legs are positioned here compared with the normal presentation for that head and neck to come out with it, with the legs at the same time. So you're either going to have to pull those legs out, or like from here, or push the lamb back and then straighten the legs out and get it going. Like I said, it may seem fairly simple if there's one lamb in there. It's a little bit different if there's twins or triplets. Yeah. What do? The best we can. The best we can. And there's no way to describe this. You have unfortunately, you have to live it. So you got 4 legs and 1 head at the same time. Something's got to give. So probably the best bet is push the one with the head back and try to get the one that's coming straight out first, then go after the second one, I think. But when you pull, please, when you pull, make sure that the leg that you have belongs to the lamb that you're trying to pull. You've got to get to the head to find that out. Some necessary equipment for this lambing, whether it's normal or whether these are abnormal presentations, is a lambing panel. Andre talked about this on the utensils portion. To pin the ewe up in the pen in a small area so you can catch her, so that you don't have to run her all over the daggum pen. Then you saw us keeping the record on that pair of twins that was born a minute ago, and then the iodine. He just used a little bottle that you can put iodine in this and dip that navel as well, with the iodine solution to cut down, prevent navel ill that might occur in these lambs. In the upper left is what is that one? That's the stomach tube with the syringe attached to it. Okay, that is the most important piece of equipment to have. Whether the lambs come normal or whether they come in abnormal positions and you get it out alive, that is the one. Then right below that, down below that, is the lamb puller. And Andre described that in that first session, where he puts it over the head. And then in the upper right is that little piece of string that he could use in conjunction with the lamb puller. Okay, and he can pull also, tie this string on the feet of the lamb, and the puller is over the head, and kind of pull in concert together, so that nothing slips back on you. So you got a hold of both of them, and you won't lose what you've got. But the one in the lower right doesn't have to do with the lamb per se here. It is more for, that's a prolapse spoon, uterine or vaginal prolapse spoon. It's a piece of plastic, and you can insert that into the vagina, through the vulva into the vagina, and then make a halter to hold that into the in the vagina and late pregnancy when the ewes are really heavy, and then the lambs can exit her body underneath that spoon. She can urinate and defecate and everything without any problem. And this is a lifesaver too. And this is, I think, if ewes are not maybe fed enough concentrate, they're fed too much roughage, or it may be genetic. Sometimes when they are heavy with lamb, then you might have a vaginal prolapse, and you need to have some of these available to work with them. These are sleeves or gloves, and this is just simply a lube bottle to put on here so that you can, it'll make your your hand. If you can put, you can use your hand, or you can put a sleeve, and or you can put a little that glove, and then put the sleeve over it, and then put the lube on to work in the U. Or you can, if you just want to go in, roll your sleeve up, and put the lube on, you can do it. Make sure you wash your hands before you do so. These are some lamb diseases. I'm going to go. As I said before, if you don't have sore mouth, don't touch it. If you have sore mouth on your sheep, don't touch it, because you might get it. It's called orphan humans. Okay? But if you do have sore mouth in your sheep, you're going to have to deal with it, because it is a virus. It's occurrence. It's throughout this country. We have it. We have to vaccinate for it. It affects nursing lambs, like that one that you saw. Then the lambs try to nurse the ewe, and it spreads it to the ewe, teats and udders. She can get mastitis as a result of it, because she doesn't let the lamb nurse. She can die from mastitis. It's orphan humans. See the sore on that finger? You can wear it out if you get it. 3 to 4 weeks. It's painful as the dickens, but you can wear it out, and then you're immune to it. Symptoms are vesicles, as you see here, pustules, scabs, so much, then the lamb becomes hungry. He starves because you won't let him nurse. He doesn't necessarily, he might not die, but he does so poor that he won't ever grow normally, because that's where the morbidity comes into play. Treatment is to vaccinate, or you can remove those lesions that you see around that mouth and the nose. If you do that, make sure you use gloves unless you already had ORF at one time or another. Prevent is to use the live virus. I'm sure that there's nobody in this audience that is old enough to have had a smallpox vaccine, except me. I had the smallpox vaccine when I was a youngster. Everybody had to have one back then. They had to make a little scratch on your arm, okay? And then they painted the stuff on like we do with sore mouth, and it made a little sore like you saw on that finger of that in that previous slide, right up here on your arm, and then you're immune to smallpox. So once you start this, though, you have to vaccinate all your sheep once you start. And so we vaccinate our lambs at birth, because we picked up the sore mouth from some other outfit when we bought sheep from somebody else, and that's where it came from. So vaccination is prevention. Tetanus. I doubt there's anybody in here that has encountered tetanus with baby lambs caused by Clostridium. That Clostridium that's tetani, okay? There's other strains of the Clostridium. It's a bad dude. It lives in the small intestine of the sheep. And when the environment, the situation is just right, then one of these might come to the front. And in this case, if it's tetani, then the lamb could contract tetanus. It's always here in the environment. We say it's here indefinitely, and especially in Kentucky, and especially it seems like, and I don't know why, but they say that because of the horses. It occurs if you have a docking and castrating or soon thereafter, especially if you dock or castrate the lamb when it's too old or too big. Okay, then it leaves an open wound, and then the organism that is in the environment continually happens to get into that wounded area, open wound area, and goes from there. And the other one place they can get in is through the navel cord if we don't use the iodine. And typically it'll occur here as from a week to 4 weeks of age. However, you could have bigger lambs and have an open wound somewhere, and older lambs could pick it up as well if they happen to be at the wrong place at the right time. We know the symptoms of tetanus, I think. The number of tetanus lambs that I've seen, and you can count on one hand or less. Again, I refer to Andre. He can remember only one or two that he's seen. So small number, but it is devastating if you have it with one of these lambs. You lose a whole bunch, and you don't expect it. You don't know what it is, and then bang, it's there and it's gone. If you had an outbreak of more than one, I guess, you could vaccinate with the antitoxin. That's fast acting and hope for the best. But items 5C is the important thing. Should plan to vaccinate your ewes with CDT. That's enterotoxemia type C, D, along with tetanus. Type C and D are clostridial organisms as well. So all three of these are clostridial, and they live in the small intestine of the sheep. So provide a toxoid. This is a toxoid. They have to build, with the toxoid, they build up immunity. The antitoxin is immediate and doesn't last very long. So the toxoid, 6 weeks and 2 weeks before lambing begins, give it to the ewe. Then you got to give a booster 2 to 4 weeks if they haven't been vaccinated before. And these two vaccines will protect the baby lamb from type C and type D and tetanus up until about 5 weeks of age. Okay. All right. Now, if the ewes have been vaccinated with this year, then next year, all they'll need is a booster about 2 to 4 weeks before they start the lamb. Only one vaccine then. I think that's the key to taking care of tetanus. This is hemorrhagic enterotoxemia or enterotoxemia type C. Enterotoxemia type C. We just call it, put the hemorrhagic on there. The veterinarians put that on there because of the bleeding that's internally. But it is caused by Clostridium also, type C, and it occurs in nursing lambs, really young lambs. If you've vaccinated the ewes, this should be taken care of. We vaccinate ewes, but we don't ever vaccinate the lamb. They're protected from type C through passive immunity until they're about 5 weeks of age. Symptoms are here. Stops nursing. It's about anything. Depression, tremors, weak, kick, bloody scours, and die. You might give the antitoxin at birth if the ewes haven't been vaccinated. Would recommend, some people recommend doing that. Again, the prevention of this is using a toxoid 6 weeks and 2 weeks before, and then the next year, just one booster. Well, this is one of the biggest problems that we have in this country with young lambs is scours. And the reason it is so devastating is because a lot of times it develops into pneumonia. Salmonella and the coliforms are the cause. Scours, 4 to 6 week old lambs. They're liable to be the best lambs you got. They just go to pot in a hurry. Lose weight, have a fever, become dehydrated, die. Or if you maybe can get them over it to some degree, they still might develop into pneumonia. Treatment is given electrolytes. And we might give them an absorbent. You'd have to check with a veterinarian to see what that might be. Some way to give them a dose orally that would slow down the rate of passage in the digestive tract. What happens with scours, the way I look at it, is they consume the milk and it goes through the digestive tract too fast. So it goes out the back end. This milk has to slow down so that it can be digested in the digestive tract and the nutrients be absorbed into the bloodstream. And in this case, it doesn't do it. So if we could put something in there to slow that rate of passage down, they'd have a greater chance of digesting this and not running scours at the back end. Prevention, pure and simple. Environmental hygiene, where there are. Filth is the main cause. Manure, urine, all this, a poor environment. And if they didn't get colostrum, they need that colostrum, see, to ward off this immunity. They might have picked some of these bugs up right there as they were born. So they need to get that colostrum in them as soon as possible. The other thing, for scours is concerned, is attributed to ventilation. If there's not enough airflow in the barn or wherever they are, then, and it's sticky in there, a lot of humidity, and the environment is not very good, that's a prime place for scours to develop. These are baby lamb scours too. Remember that they're in the first month or so of life. So basically, it's a result of consumption of milk. So the bacteria get in here and love that environment in the digestive tract where the milk is, and as a result, they can create devastation. Then there's that pneumonia caused by Pasteurella hemolytica. Environmental stress, same thing as I said as far as scours were concerned. And there's the word, scours, the two-step process. If anybody's ever heard of a lamb that's got a rattle in its breathing, be careful. That's what you got to take care of right there, quickly. Nose and eye discharge, high fever, just like in humans, droopy ears. This is devastating. Treatments with sulfamethicine, penicillin. We still use penicillin extensively. Gentamicin or Genocin, dexamethasone, Naxal, all of these. And you need to see a veterinarian to see what the most up-to-date medicine would be for pneumonia in anything, in any mammal, okay? They'll be able to help you there. The last thing is once the lamb's got pneumonia, you better start to pray. Okay? Even though you're going to treat him with some of this other stuff. You need to have a place where there's air movement, but no drafts. A draft area where the wind whistles in specifically. You know, you get lamb in tobacco barns and it's got cracks between the boards and the wall. Okay, yeah, and the cold gets in, but the wind doesn't blow through there necessarily. And if it does, you may want to get on, put your hay in here on the north wall to keep that north wind from blowing through those cracks. So arrange your barn so that you don't get drafts, wind blowing through where these baby lambs are born and live for the first 2 or 3 weeks. Lots of space. Ewes and lambs, I'd recommend that ewes with twins have 25 to 35 square feet of barn space each, if you possibly can, and keep everything as clean as we can. This is a metabolic disorder rather than a disease, white muscle disease or stiff limb disease. If your rations contain plenty of selenium and vitamin E that the ewes get, and then the lambs subsequently get the milk there, it should be okay. And most of the time it is. And what you'll do is after the lamb is weaned maybe, and then they might run into selenium or vitamin E deficiency. And this could be straight out, or it could be precipitated if you have excess sulfur in your water, let's say, or in your feed, or in your soil, wherever. So it magnifies the occurrence of stiff lamb disease because it prevents the selenium and vitamin E from being absorbed as efficiently as it should be. You can get these at birth, like a heart attack. They have a stiff gain, their inability to extend, they have a roached back, they'll be stiff. You'll recognize them as being stiff, okay? And the way to treat it is to inject selenium vitamin E mixture. It is still called Bo-C. You can buy Bo-C and inject here. We encounter that once in a while with lambs at the UK sheep unit. And we correct this by keeping a supply of Bo-C available. Even though we think that our rations contain the right amount of selenium and vitamin E, obviously sometimes they don't, or that we wouldn't run into it, or some of these lambs aren't able to use, for whatever reason in their body, the selenium and vitamin E that they might be consuming in the ration. You could give, if you wanted to, an additional vitamin E. It won't hurt them. In addition to the Bo-C. Don't give extra selenium. Don't give more than what's in the Bo-C, because selenium, there's really a fine line between a selenium requirement for a lamb and its toxicity. You'll wind up giving them too much, and then you got more problems. So some of our veterinarians that we respect say to inject lambs at birth with Bo-C. That's okay. That's okay. Always provide mineral supplement for all the sheep that contains selenium. Make sure it's got the right amount of selenium in it, and that's every day throughout the year. And a few years ago, we were having a little trouble getting used bred and other things. And so my extension friend in Iowa, at Iowa State, I just was describing our situation to him. And he says, "What's your rations look like?" And I showed him, and he said, "You don't have enough vitamin E in here, and you need to increase the vitamin E into your ration." We did that, and we solved that problem. So don't be worried about putting too much vitamin E into a mixed ration. Granted, all of our feedstuffs, grass, so forth, should provide adequate amounts of this. But as we well know, that's not always the case, because there's different examples or situations where we run into a deficiency. I'll try to answer any questions anybody might have.
If you are going to give colostrum to a lamb, is it okay to do it with a bottle if the lamb will take it?
If you don't have a stomach tube, you're going to have to do that if you can't get the lamb to take the colostrum from its mother. Yes, that's okay. It will, but it probably will be difficult to get lamb on its mother after it is nursed, after it's gotten full of colostrum from the bottle. So you'll still have to work with that lamb to get it on the teat. Once they nurse the mother's teat and then you try to put them on a bottle, it's hard. And once they put them on a bottle and they nurse that and try to put it back on the teat, it's hard as well. So it's going to take you some patience.
Can you repeat that method that Andre used on that ewe to determine if there was another lamb in it or not?
That is called bumping. And you noticed he was trying to get the ewe stand still enough so that he could just double up his fist, okay? And then the bottom part of his arm, then he would just push up on her belly right in front of her udder. And that would push a lamb, if there's a lamb in there, that would push it up and then he would drop it, and then he would feel something hard. Otherwise, if she doesn't have a lamb in there, it's just fluid that is in there, and there's no obstacle or nothing like a bone or something like this. So that's called bumping, and it takes a little practice to do that. And you may not be able to do it the first time or two, but keep trying. Keep trying. Practice on these ewes, even though she may be done having her lambs, and you're sure of that. Okay, then you could practice on a ewe, and her belly right in front of her udder will go up and down, and you'll feel fluid in there.
Okay, I got somebody that had a ewe. She was an experienced mom, and she did not develop an udder, but lambed right on time with a 5.5 pound lamb.
Yeah.
She wasn't producing enough milk, so they tube fed for a day. Then the lamb started getting enough milk and was growing well, so they stopped supplementing. Any thoughts as to why the ewe didn't develop her udder on time?
Don't know. Some of them are, some may happen like that. This would be an isolated case. She just didn't, her hormones weren't in sync specifically at that time, but was glad that she began to produce milk. Is that correct? Later on. So sometimes they just don't come to their milk real quick, or they don't have the full udder or all of it there. But still, they may have colostrum, but not the milk itself. So you may have to use some types of hormones to stimulate milk production, but hopefully the lamb will, by nursing on the ewe, will cause the ewe to start. Yeah, that's good. That's good. I'd watch that ewe the next time she had a lamb, though. Be careful with her, because she might do the same thing again. If you don't want to put up with her doing that, you may want to take her to town.
We had somebody recommend a product called Replenish that's sold by PBS Animal Health for weak lambs. They said they cut the milk and fed that mix with water.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Until it rebounded.
And it worked good. That's good. Okay. Replenish. Yeah.
Replenish. Yeah. PBS Animal Health. Can you inject the Bose to healthy lambs at birth just to cover bases in case, even though you provide mineral with selenium year round? And then any other shots you suggest to give that lamb at birth?
Well, as far as the Bose could be given if you suspect that you might be running into a selenium deficiency. However, be really careful, because we can get too much selenium into the lamb. That's a judgment call on your part. If you lived in Ohio, then I might say that's okay. If you lived in Kentucky, I'd say maybe, because Ohio is noted for a selenium deficient area, so that lambs might need some extra selenium there. I'm always just concerned about giving too much selenium. And the other thing, if it ain't broke, do we need to fix it? Probably not. The other thing is another injection at birth might be that enterotoxemia type C antitoxin vaccine. And I don't mean to sound smart aleck here. If the rations might not be just quite right, okay, if there's a little bit off as far as they're concerned, then you might be a little bit more prone to run into enterotoxemia type C than you would if the ration is balanced for all the nutrients. So theoretically, we should not have a problem as far as any of the enterotoxemias are concerned if rations are balanced and our management is up to snuff. Otherwise, we might need to give them an antitoxin. It won't hurt them. It won't hurt them to do that. You can do it with that. Again, the selenium is another story that you got to consider.
TSC and Rural King sell a general brown block of mineral. It's labeled for everything but sheep, but it does not say not to feed the sheep. Is there any problems with that particular mineral choice?
First, I guess I prefer, and we recommend loose mineral rather than a block. The block might be too hard. I don't know. Could be too hard. If it is too hard, the sheep will bite on it, break their teeth off. If it is not too hard, it may be highly palatable, and they may eat excessive amounts. The excessive amounts, I don't think will hurt them, other than your pocketbook. I would be also careful as far as the copper content is concerned. That would be the main concern as far as the minerals that may be in that mix. And if they don't say it is specific for sheep, I'm guessing that it would probably be more for goats or cows or something other than sheep. And goats and cows can stand a lot more copper than sheep can. So I think it could be, I'm not going to blame it on anything and say that it would, but I think it perhaps maybe could be a problem as far as copper is concerned. Be careful. When you're buying mineral, make sure it is sheep mineral.
How do you tell the difference between a fat ewe and a pregnant ewe near lambing time?
There's specific ways to do a body condition score on ewes. And one of the ways is with your hands. Catch them and handle them over the backbone, over the ribs. Another way is by looking at them and seeing that they're fat. If the ewe is pregnant, if she's really pregnant, she's going to be sagging in front of her hips. Her dock is going to droop. Her vulva is going to be really big. If she's just an old fat ewe, she's going to have a little bitty vulva. And she's going to be roly-poly all over. The ewe that is pregnant is going to be really heavy in her middle, in her belly area. There's nothing in her, all the lambs are not, none of the lambs are in her belly, but we talk about that she's heavy and she's really pregnant. She's got a big old belly, okay? No, that is not, that's not the belly. It is the uterus that is so heavy. So she'll look really heavy in the middle. The fat ewe that is not pregnant, she'll really look good, but she won't be heavy in the middle.
Do you recommend older ewes for first-time sheep owners for breeding and lambing?
That's okay if you know where the ewes came from, okay, and you trust the person that you get them from, okay. Their experience, that would help, yes. Like 2 or 3 year old ewes, okay, that would be good, but they're going to cost you. If you get older ewes, make sure that you check their mouths, make sure they're good, check their udders, make sure they don't have a problem there. All of this is a-okay to do with older ewes, and they can teach us a lot. They really can. They really can. They're good at doing that. And if you can get a hold of some of those that you have total confidence in, go for it.
There's some good comments about products and treatments for weak lambs in the chat box if you haven't looked at it.
Okay.
Take a couple of minutes and look in there.
Can you give us some of those? That's good. Because that's important, because we need to interact with one another and see what's going on, what you're using that's working or what might not be working. Because everybody's situation is different. And all we can do is just kind of try to give a baseline and let you folks work from that, because your situations, every one of you are going to be different.
Somebody gets a a product called SMZ sulfamethoxazole, a quarter tablet ground up and mixed in 1 ounce of Pepto-Bismol for bottle lambs that have diarrhea.
Okay, all right.
It works well.
Pepto-Bismol is doing good, isn't it? Yeah, yeah, that's okay, yes.
Somebody said related to the Replenish product, they've noticed that omega-3 plus for weak lambs 2 works really well. 2 pumps also acts as feed supplement if they are weak.
Okay, okay, that's good.
Somebody else said they've used a product called Survive from Hunter Nutrition,
Yes, that's
and
good.
that worked well.
And Hunter Nutrition is a good outfit. They've got good products. There's no question about that. Because the nutritionist for them is a terrific sheep producer.